what did the Prophet ﷺ mean when he said that females are deficient in their intellect? So this is a very good question, and we know the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ in Sahih Bukhari and Sahih Muslim that when he was asked about this, the word naqs is used. Now, naqs maybe is mistranslated. It's often in terms of being deficient. It's not being deficient or being less. Really, it's more of a maybe a better translation would be a reduction. But here we have to understand the full hadith in the context of the hadith. So there's two parts, important parts. The first part, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ mentioned that a witness of a female may be only equal to, or two females would be needed to equal one male. Now, why did he ﷺ mention this? So the scholars have looked into this, and they've said that at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, what he was talking about were contractual issues. And in the culture of the people at that time, females were not engaging in these types of contractual issues. This was not the norm of the culture. They didn't maybe know the ins and outs of what would be processed in terms of contracts. So because of this, many scholars mention that if one female is unsure, then she could have a second female there as to increase the likelihood of there being no issues. That's if she was unsure. However, if she was sure, then there's no problem with that. You wouldn't necessarily need a second witness. And in fact, even if there were two females, then this will be much stronger than one male. And many occasions, if there was no issue, then one female would be equal to one male. Some of the females, of course, are amongst the highest of levels in terms of their trustworthiness, for example, in terms of what they were doing. Salama, for example, Darda is mentioned as well, in terms of being the strength of their evidence, and they were female. In fact, when we go to, if we take the view that some say that they're deficient in their intellect, then how is it that so many female companions narrated numerous hadith from the Prophet ﷺ? Otherwise, it would be possible. In fact, Imam Al-Dhahabi mentions over 120 female narrators of hadith, and he says that not one of them was narrated to be a liar. So again, it shows the high level of intellect of a female. So it doesn't mean that they're deficient in their intellect, but we have to understand the context of the hadith and what it meant. The second part of the hadith, importantly as well, the Prophet ﷺ said, إِذَا حَاضَتْ if a female is on her menstrual cycle, then لَمْ تُصَلِّ وَلَمْ تَصُمْ, that she would not pray and she would not fast. Again, it doesn't mean that they're deficient, it just means in terms of a reduction in their ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because this is what would happen at that time. They wouldn't be praying and they wouldn't be fasting when they're on their menstrual cycle. So again, we need to understand the context. It doesn't mean that they're deficient in terms of their intellect. It's not a blanket thing like that. It's not black and white like that. We have to understand the context of the hadith, why it was mentioned, and what the scholars do mention about it. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. Okay. Next.